Hairpin lace is one of those alternative crochet techniques that can be really mysterious. In this video, I want to show you how to take away the mystery of it. If you know how to single crochet, I can show you how to make hairpin lace. I can show you how to make it in strips, and I can even show you how to make these beautiful medallions from this shawl that are then worked in the round. All you're going to need is a crochet hook, some worsted weight yarn, and a hairpin lace loom, which is something you can find at just about any craft store. Let's get started. Before we begin a strip of hairpin lace, what we want to do is cut a couple of strands of yarn in a contrast color. And what these are going to do is keep our loops in place when we take it off of the hairpin lace loom. You'll understand that a lot better when we get there, so just trust me at this point and tie them on. So we're going to tie one on this side. And again, the easiest way to do this is in a contrast color. So we'll tie one around this side. And it's just a really handy tool or trick to keep your yarn in place once we take it off the loom. So there we go. We're ready to start. Side. And what you want to do is wrap it around the loom and tie it at about the halfway point. You want the loop to be half the width of your hairpin lace loom. Okay, so that's about half. Okay, so now we have the loop on the right rod of the hairpin lace loom, the yarn behind the left rod, and we're going to wrap it around the back, and you're going to insert your hook through the loop that we tied on in the beginning, yarn over your hook, pull through that yarn in the back, pull it through, and then pull through another loop. You're going to move your hook to the middle so that as you turn your loom, it's now in the front. You're going to wrap or pull the yarn or insert your hook through the loop on the left-hand side, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, which is a single crochet. Insert your hook back end through the loom as we turn. Insert your hook into the top loop on the left hand side, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, top of the hook, through the loom, turn, insert your hook through the top of the loop on the left hand side, pull up a loop of the yarn in the back, yarn over, pull through two. And I'll keep doing this really slowly so you can follow along. Basically, we're just doing one single crochet, twisting, doing one single crochet. And the most fluid way to do it for me is to insert the hook, top side of the hook, not the hook side, but the top or back end of the hook, through the middle as you turn. The more fluid you can make your movements, the more speed you can pick up as you go along. So as we develop some rows, we're going to slide our work down. And this is basically all you do to do a simple single crochet hairpin lace strip. You could do this 300 stitches long, you could do it 40 stitches long, depending on what type of project you're doing. You could make it as long or short as you need. For the hat in Crochet So Lovely, I made a smaller one to create the crown on the top of the hat. And for the motif shawl in Crochet So Lovely, I used a small strip to create the motif. But for example, I've done other shawls where I've done long strips, and they were well into the hundreds of number of stitches on each side. Generally speaking, hairpin lace is described in patterns as number of loops on each side of your loom. But make sure to reference the pattern that you're following to, oh, see, I missed a step while I was talking. Missed the second half of the single crochet. All right, so for the motif that we're going to do for the shawl, I'm going to do 42 loops on each side. So why don't you go ahead and continue on and get 42 loops on each side of your loom, and then I'll show you what to do from there. I now have 42 loops on each side of my hairpin lace loom, so we're going to fasten off. Cut the yarn and fasten off just like you normally would at the end of a regular crochet project. Just pull your yarn right through the last stitch. We're going to slide the loom pieces off. We'll leave that side on for a second. Now, if you were doing this piece for real, for an actual medallion and a shawl, I would suggest doing your inside contrast strip in the regular color of your project. But for practicing purposes, I think it's much easier for you to understand what's going on if I use a contrast color. Now what you could do is slide this around until you get to the knot, hanging on to both pieces as you go. There we go. Because you're only going to need one side to stay inside the loops. And what we're going to do now is just tie it. Cinch it as tight as you can on that side. And again, if you did this in the same color as your actual strip, it would look a lot prettier in your finished piece. So now we're safe to take the other side off. Just want to hang on to our emergency line here. Now, if you feel brave, you can slide it out. What the thing is that you want these loops to stay straight so that you're working into them in order. If I were to leave this still and not move it anymore and just start crocheting, I'd probably be fine. But what I'm going to do is cut it, hang on to one side, pull the other so it's twice as long now, and that'll give us a little more room for stretching it out. See, so what's going to happen is as we crochet into those loops, we're going to end up creating a circle. And we're going to do that by doubling the amount of stitches into the loops. Just like you would when making a motif where you start in the center and work your way out, you would double your stitches in that first round to give you the growth to move outward and stay flat. So we're going to go into the first loop here. And you're going to start with a slip stitch to join, chain 1, and 2 single crochets in that first loop. And you're just going to do that all the way around. And you want to decide, do you think they would look prettier if you twisted it first or if you kept it straight first? And that's going to be a style preference. I think it would look prettier right now if I twisted it. So I'm going to turn it so that it crosses over itself once before I insert my hook, like that. Just whichever way you end up doing it, just make sure you're consistent throughout so it remains, you know, a textured pattern instead of looking like mishmash. And as we work our way around, you'll start to see the circular edge forming. See how it's starting to look like a curve? The more we move along here, the closer it'll look to a circle. Now that we've worked 2 single crochets in each loop all the way around the hairpin lace strip, you can see now we have a medallion. All you want to do is slip stitch to the first single crochet at the beginning of the round to join. Oops, that's the chain 1, so we'll get into the single crochet right there. Insert your hook and pull a loop through that stitch and the one on your hook. We now have completed the round. At this point we have 84 single crochets in the round. You could either fasten off and this could be your motif, but if you're looking to design motifs or join them as you go, you could now create any sort of border around this, a chain 5 mesh or something with corners. You could use this any other way you would use a medallion or a circular motif to join into a fabric that's joined as you go. Next up, I'll show you how to join one strip to another. When making linear strips of hairpin lace, you want to make sure that your emergency thread is going to be as long as it needs to be for however long your strip is going to be. For example, if you were going to make, let's say, 300 loops on each side of the yarn, you want to make sure that this emergency thread is long enough to accommodate that. So whereas we made the strip really short for the medallion, we're going to want to make sure that this thread is super long if we're going to do a really long strip. We're not going to for this particular video today, but I wanted to show you how you would do this if you were going to make a really long one. Just for sake of being easy and simple, I'm going to make strips that are 42 loops long again like I did in the first demonstration. So we're going to start again by wrapping the yarn around the hairpin lace loom, only one side of it, and you want to make your first loop about halfway between, like that. Doesn't have to be precise, but close is good. So now we're going to wrap this around twice so that now we can work into that loop and pull the yarn from the back through. Chain 1. Now we're going to insert our hook, the side without the hook, through the loom, turn, and just move these threads out of the way. Insert your crochet hook into the loop on the left, pull the working yarn through from the back, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we have 1 loop on the left side and 2 loops on the right side. That's going to be important when reading patterns because your pattern will say how many loops to have on each side of your loom. Now we turned our loom, we're going to insert our hook into the loop on the left side, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Insert your crochet hook into the middle with your hook facing you, turn, insert your crochet hook into the loop on the left, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Do that a few more times really slowly. Now here's an example of a time when you might get confused. See how this loop is now looking like it's coming from underneath? It really isn't. If you look closely, it is the top loop, and if you have to look to the back side to make sure, it is the top loop. So if you just have to cajole it up, see how it is the top loop, so that would be the one you work into. Pull through a loop, pull through 2. We now have 1, 2, 3 loops on the right and 1, 2, 3 loops on the left. And what I want you to do is just repeat this until you have 42 loops on each side of your loom, and as you move along you can slide your stitches down. Like, you know, once you have hundreds of stitches on here you would absolutely have to do that, but even just to get away from those mangy loose ends of your emergency line, it's a good idea to slide them down. Okay, looks like I could slide these down again. So I'm just going to stand it up, slide everything down. You want to make sure that you do it pretty smoothly because you don't want these to bunch up on themselves. You want them to try to stay in their correct positioning. Probably wouldn't hurt to count again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, we've got a ways to go. Here's another loop that's gotten out of sorts, and I just wanted to show it to you so you can recognize what to do. See how it's actually dipped underneath this loop, but if you look from the back, you can see that it actually is the top loop. So you want to lift it up over and then work into it. This kind of a tip is something that you'll need once you're at home and working on your own hairpin lace strip. Recognizing what things look like is going to be half the battle of making sure that you don't make the same mistakes. We're around 30 loops on each side now, so we'll keep going and get to 42 on each side. Okay, I just counted my strip and I went a little too far. I have 45 loops on this side and 44 loops on this side, and I only wanted 42 on each side. So we're going to count backwards and unravel. So we're going to take out 3 on this side and 2 on that side. So we're going to go 1 on this side, 1 on that side, 2 on this side, 2 on this side, and 3 on this side. Cut our tail a little bit shorter and fasten it off. Okay, now we can pull our loom out, slide all of those off, the whole thing off. Okay, so pull the whole thing out, keeping our lifeline in there. Okay, so here's another good example to show you how much give this has. Here's our first one that hasn't been stretched at all, and this one we just stretched a tiny bit, and you can see how much difference in size it looks like already. Basically, there are several ways that you can join these. One of the easiest ways is to just crochet an edging onto one of the sides, and then you could do that same thing to another one, and then basically you could join them as you would any other crochet technique, whether it would be slip stitching them together or making a chain to join them together. But today I want to show you how to do a classic hairpin lace join, which really has no more crocheting at all. You're just going to join a loop to a loop. It's really simple and it doesn't require any additional yarn. You're going to insert your hook into the first loop on your strip to your right, then pull the first loop on your strip to the left through the loop on the right. Then you're going to pull the next one from the left and the next one from the right. The next one from the right and the next one from the left. And if you can't get it to work perfectly like a slip stitch, you just want to help manipulate it with your fingers. If you didn't have a crochet hook, you could even do this whole step with your fingers. Kind of like that whole finger crochet craze, but this isn't even crochet, it's just looping a loop through a loop. And get through all the strands of your yarn. Nobody likes splitting their yarn, right? Okay, so you're going to do this all the way up the entire strip. And if you're lucky and you counted correctly, this should work itself out perfectly at the end of the strips. Once you reach the end here and you loop through your last loop, you really can't leave it like that. You have to do something to secure this, otherwise it'll unravel back down to the beginning. So what I like to do is to just pull one of the tails from one of the original strips, pull it through, making sure that you keep your loop elongated around the length of the hairpin lace strips, and then fasten off. So you're going to chain one and then fasten off so that you get the end to look the length of the other loops on there. And you can pull that tighter, and you can see what that join looks like. And that's just looping a loop through a loop.
Hairpin lace may be one of the alternative forms of crochet, but it really has a lot of possibilities.
Not only can you make scarves that look really complicated and lacy by joining strips together, you can combine strips and medallions to make a hat like this, or you can make beautiful medallions to create a really fancy, elegant looking shawl like this. Leave a comment and let me know what you make with hairpin lace.